Update rules, right? So update rules are how data has to be updated from info source to target. Okay, now, and what I said info source, like transfer rules are specific to the, globally applied to all the targets, whereas update rules are specific to the target, right? Fine. So, what is it now? Update rules are specific to target, whereas transfer rules are global to target. Clear? So now, what is the data flow we were discussing yesterday was? This was like this, right? From info source to target is through what? Update rules. Okay, right. So these are rules. Fine. Now, if you can observe, data is coming from source system to data source. Through transfer rules, it is going to info source. Then through update rules, it is updating into target, right? Now what happens? So data source and info source are typically the structures. So structure means it's not holding any data permanently, right? Suppose any error is there while loading. Imagine in a file, in a source, let us say I have some special character. So BI does not support a special character, right? So I cannot load data of special character into BI. Or let us say, imagine there is some lower case, but while defining what I did, did I allow any lower, while creating the info object, did I select that lowercase checkbox? You have not selected the lowercase checkbox. That means you have said like to allow only uppercase. What happens now? Will it allow to load the data into the target? No. You will get a error. Or let us say, for creating the info object, I said data type is numerical. But data what you have now? Character string. Now, while loading, will it allow any data? No, right? So that means, first any error is coming, what happens? First data will come to, it's only a structure, right? Then it will come to info source. Will it update into the target? Your data will not be updated into target, right? Because you got a error. Now what happens? You got an error. It's not updating in the target. These are structures. Is there any data storage in the structure? Once this data is transferred from here to here, it becomes empty. Once data is trying to transfer from here to here, info source also becoming. So I cannot edit any data in the data source or info source. That's why what has been done. First what you have to do, you have to go to source and you have to edit the data. But do we have access to source system to edit the data? Can I log on to R3 and can I change the data? Is it possible? It's not possible, right? So we cannot edit the data in the source system. We don't have access to source system, right? That's why what we are doing, that's why what is that now? What we are going to see next definition is called PSA. Persistent staging area. What is it now? Persistent staging area. So PSA is a two-dimensional table. PSA is what? It's not any structure as such. It's a two-dimensional table. Hello. Please call them. Please call them and come to join us. I started the class. No. So PSA is a two-dimensional. So what has been done? Data coming from the source system. What is PSAC? Data coming from the source system has been staged at PSA for what? For error handling. Okay, data coming from the source system has been staged at PSA, or you can say has been staged in BIW system at PSA for what? For error handling. So now what is it now? What are the data that is coming to the BIW before loading into the target? Where we are putting the data now? Into PSA table. So any error occurs, what happens? Your updation will stop at PSA table. Now where is this PSA table now? In BIW itself. Can I go and edit the data now in PSA table? Yes. So that means, what is it now? Can you tell me what may be the fields that it may take in your PSA table? How your PSA table looks? PSA table looks how? Same as your target, huh? Data coming from the source system has been staged in BIW at PSA. What is the data coming from the source system? It is according to what? It is according to data source. That means your PSA table looks as it is as your data source. You will not create any PSA table. When you create a data source, it automatically generates a PSA table. So your PSA table looks as it is as your what? Data source. So what are you specifying the data source? Your PSA table also looks as it is. PSA table. This is your data source. So your PSA table looks as it is as your data source. So now, how is that now? Data from the first source system, where it comes is to data source. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you. Yeah, I'll send you. Okay, so data coming from the source system has been staged in. So data source is a structure. So structure is not holding any data. Structure will not hold any data permanently, right? So structure is only temporary storage. So I cannot edit my data in the data source. We cannot edit my data in your data source, okay? So now, whenever you create your data source, what happens? Internally, System will be generating one. System will be generating one PSA table. So this is your data source. From data source, data will be going into PSA. Hello. Okay, fine, no problem. Right. So now, any error occurs while loading, what happens now? Your updation will stop at where? PSA table. So after PSA table, then the transfer rules will be executed. Okay, these are your transfer rules. Okay, understand now? So, how is data coming now? Source system to data source to PSA, then through transfer rules it goes to info source, then through update rules finally it will go into. So any error occurs, what happens? Loading will be stopped at what? PSA table. So if this PSA is in BA side itself, what I can do? I can go rectify my data in the PSA and update it into target. Clear now? Right? Any doubts now with PSA concept? Right? So, what is PSA now? Data coming from the source system has been staged in BIW at PSA for what? For error handling. Now, yes, tell me. Yes, automatically it will be created by system itself. You will not create any PSA table. When you create a data source, PSA is automatically generated by the system itself. As you have seen, when I was creating info object, P table was automatically generated same way. When I create a data source, PSA table will be automatically generated. You need not worry about that. And what is that now? PSA consists of raw data. PSA consists of what? Raw data means same data what is there in the source. See here it is hash C1 means here also it is. Your transfer rules are executed. Only once data is going from PSA to info source. That means so PSA consists of what? Raw data. Same data what is there in the source. It will be available in the PSA table. So now what you will be doing, time by time, let us say every 15 days or every 20 days, you will be cleaning this. PSA table. Right? Because once data is updated into target, we don't require any PSA, right? Data in PSA. Only it is for error handling purpose. Clear? What is PSA is clear? Right. So next definition what we can see is info package. So info package is a scheduler. Info package is what? It's a scheduler which defines when the load has to be triggered. Info package is a scheduler which defines when the load has to be. Now I have made entire link from source to destination, from source to target. So now I need to start my process. That is what, through what you start? Info. Now let us say I want to load it every 1 day or 1 week or 1 hour. Where do I specify that? In my info package. Which file I want to load? Where do I specify the file name? In the info package. and you need to give some conditions while loading. Let us say, where can I give that condition? In the info package, or whether you want to extract entire data from the source or only latest updated. That's what we call initial update and delta updates. First time what you are doing is extracting entire data. Next time onwards only the updations. That setting where do you specify? In the info package. So basically, your main task, what are you developing the link from source to target is to develop your info packages. So once your info package is ready, next time onwards only scheduling the info package. In the support project, what we'll be doing? So these info packages will be keep on running. We'll be just monitoring them whether it is successfully running or not. Understand now? So that is what is now your info. So now, how is your flow? See, observe, very simple. Huh? What kind of error handling means? So suppose I have some special character in my source. So while loading, will it allow us to load into the target? It's generally called data related errors. Suppose you created, while creating this info object, you said don't allow lowercase. I didn't select any lowercase checkbox, but my source is having something called lowercase value. Then again you'll get a error. Or let us say, suppose you have selected it as a numeric, but while you are loading as a string. Again, that's also a kind of error. Or suppose you have something called unit. Unit means standards only it will allow. Suppose rupees means it should be always loaded as INR, but let us say your source you have something called rupees RS. This kind of any data related error you can through PSA. Clear? Now, so now, how is your flow? See, you have a source system. Some source system data is going into target. In between data source, PSA, info source, right? Okay, this is your source system. From source system, where is data is coming is to the data source. So data source is a structure. Okay, from source system, data will be coming to data source. From there, it goes to what? PSA. So this is your PSA. Then from there it goes to info source. Okay. So from PSA to info source is through transfer rules. Then from info source to target is through update rules. So the small ones what I have shown is the structures, info source and data source. So PSA and target are the tables. And some update rules to target. So now through what? Through your info. Once everything is ready, what has to be done now? I need to trigger one info. So once I trigger my info package, what it will do? It is going to extract now data from source system up to where? Up to your target. Clear? So this is what is now your final BAW 3.5 related data flow. Okay? Right. So any doubts with this 3.5 data flow. Can I go further? Now, just observe now how is your 3.5 data flow. So now, I have my BAW system. Then we have a source system, right? So now, this is your BAW. That is 3.5 system. And this is your. Now, I don't want to extract entire data from my source system. I want only a particular part of that. What is that particular part is called as? From the source system, only the particular part which you want to extract is called as what? Data source. So, while starting your extraction, first what you will do? You will be creating a data source in the source system. From there, what I will be doing? We will be replicating this data source into. We are replicating this data source into BAW system. A copy of this is formed in the. A copy of this is formed in the BAW system. From there it goes to PSA table. From there it goes to info source and target, right? Right. So now if you can observe, how is data going from data source to info sources? Through transfer rules, right? I have something called as a update rules. But how is data is coming from source system to data source? Is there any rule as such? How is data coming from source system to data source? Is there any rule as such? There is no rule or something, right? That's why before starting my load, before starting my extraction, first what we are going to do is, we are going to create an interface between BAW system and the source system. Before starting our extraction, first what you have to do? Create a connectivity between BW system and the source system, that we call it as a source system connection. So those generally who know, who are already into SAP, for you, let us say you know this RFC connections and all, right? Same way, you have to create a connection between BW system and. So this is not your task. Remember, this is done by basis consultant. Because you don't know the parameters of the system, creation of source system connection is the admin task. So creating an interface between two systems. When you create interface between two systems, internally system will generate something called as IDOCs. What is it now? When you create a source system connection, what happens? System generates what? IDOCs. So IDOCs are like data containers. IDOCs are what? They act as data containers. So what is source system connection is? Creating interface between two systems. Okay, when you create interface between two systems, system generates what? IDOCs, called as data containers. IDOCs are nothing but what? Data containers, which carries data from one system to another. Now how is data coming from source system to data source is through what? Through IDOCs. Container means there is no particular structure for that. Container means what? Is there any structure for that? So what it will do, it just takes entire data from the source system and it will put it into your data source. That's why when you create a data source, it's very, very important that you need to check out your field positions. What is field positions is, suppose, what is the field position now? Source, customer number 1, This is name is second position, address is third position, phone number is fourth position. When it is putting the data, it's not object to object mapping. It just takes entire data and it will put it into the data source. I'm saying, suppose you are defining your data source as, I don't want to extract any address. What is your data source now? Number, name, and now what happens? First position is number, second position is name, third position is phone number. That means it will try to put the data of address into phone number. That's why while creating the data source, you have to clearly specify customer number position field is 1, name position field is 2. Even the third field is phone number, you have to say position number 4. Understand the logic? So that's what. So now when you are extracting, how is data coming from source system to data source is through IDOCs, which are nothing but the data containers, which are used to carry the data from one system to another system. Clear? This is also clear. So the first task before creating info source or data source, the first task what has to be done is to create a source system connection. That will be done by the basis consultant, and he will be giving the name of this particular source system connection. You will make use of that particular connection and you will start extracting the data. Clear? Right. Any doubts there? Through IDOCs concept is clear? Yeah, tell me. No, I am speaking IDOCs means it is from file as well as SAP in R3, SAP source. So when you are extracting data from SAP system or a file, we will say data is coming through IDOCs. When you say now you are extracting data from non-SAP, that is called as BAPIs and BADIs, same. What do you know in ABAP will come across different concepts, right? BAPI, BADI, all those things comes into picture. Yeah. That is, yes, exactly. It's not through IDOCs. Between SAP source and between SAP source and BI is always through IDOCs only. Automatically by the system. No, IDOCs will, when I create a source system connection, it's nothing but system is generating the IDOCs. Okay, so again, same thing. See, when you are creating a source system connection, is nothing but what basis consultant will do is will be creating one RFC connection and one logical system connection. Yeah. Fine. Now, observe now, this is now how is that? Yeah, please. That's what I'm saying, right? So, you should be matching according to your source system. The position. So now, third field is phone number in the data source, but you have to say field position is 4. Yeah, yes, exactly. So what is asking, can data source should it match exactly as it is as a source system or not? Yes, it has to match. That's what I'm saying, right? Field position. So field position, phone number in the source is same thing. Position should be same. So actually we will not create any data source. Data source will also be proposed by the system itself. According to that you can match it. It's not that complicated what you are thinking. Tomorrow when I'm starting my practical class, you'll understand that part. Right. Clear now? Done. Now, observe now, how is that now? So entire link is ready. Once I trigger my info package, what happens? BW system will be sending a request to the BW system will send what? A request to source system saying, what request it will send? It will send a request saying, I want data from your system according to structure of what? Data source. Now what happens? According to the structure of the data source, what it will do? It will extract the data. Data is not moving. Moving means source system data will become empty. What is happening here? Data is extracted. Still data will be available in the source. Once data is extracted, what happens? This data is transferred to what? BAW system. Once data is extracted, this data will be transferred to BAW system, and once data is transferred, in the transfer host, what is happening? Data gets transformed. If it was C1, I applied a routine where I converted into ZC1. If it was a Bangalore or something, I applied a constant and I converted into India. And I can do some formula, mathematical calculations. So using the transfer host, what we are doing? We are transforming the data, and finally what is happening? Data is getting loaded into target. Again, once load is successful, again BAW system will be sending a request to the source system saying load has been successful. Now, see now, whatever we discussed, in one word we want to say, in one word we want to discuss what we have discussed up to now. In one word, this process we can define it as what? ETTL. So BAW is a ETTL tool. One shot what is doing? Extraction, transfer, transform, and loading. It's all happening in one single shot. That is when you trigger your info package. So that's why when you speak about BAW, what is that we call? BAW is a ETTL tool. Okay, what is ETTL is like? Extract, transfer, transform, and load. So one shot, what as I said now, to describe about BAW, we can say it is a ETTL tool. Clear? Any doubts in this part? Clear? So whatever I said yesterday, entire thing in one word, what I can say, it's a ETTL. Clear now? And last definition you can see about this BAW flow is a TeamViewer has got. Just a minute. I think you have to reconnect to your TeamViewer. Please, all of you reconnect your TeamViewer. Now, if you can observe, what is that? You can see here, you can observe now, there are two things which are transferring between the systems, right? Between BW system and the source system, what are two things that is transferring? One is data, and one more is request is nothing but the information. So that means there are two things which are transferring between the two systems. One is data and information. So in BAW, one more last setting you have to do before extracting the data is called transfer method. What is that now? In BAW, you have to specify one more thing called transfer method. So transfer method defines how data and information should be transferred. How data and information should be transferred between two systems. Okay, what is transfer method is? It is going to define now how your data and information should be transferred between the two systems. How your data and information should be transferred between. So now you have basically two types of transfer methods. So one is called as PSA. So the first type of transfer method is called as. So IDOCs are of two types. Two types of containers we have. One which carries data, other one which carries information. Data will be coming through what? IDOCs. But what happens is data processed through now what? Processed through PSA. That means staging takes place. And what is that now? Information comes through. Information will be coming through information IDOCs, info IDOCs. Clear? And the second type of transfer method you have called as IDOC only. So when you use IDOC as your transfer method, data will be coming through data IDOCs, right? But what happens? There is no PSA. That means staging will not take place. Then there will be a problem with error handling, right? That's why SAP was recommending us to use PSA as the transfer method, and the default transfer method will be always PSA only. But recommendation given by SAP is also used to use what? PSA as the transfer method. SAP recommends us to use PSA as a transfer method. And what is that now other option as I said? IDOC, where there will not be any staging. That means what I can say in BAW 3.5, PSA is not mandatory. In 3.5, what is it now? PSA is not. So if you want, you can stage your data, or else not required. But recommendation given by SAP was to use PSA as a transfer method. And what has been done in 7, this transfer method concept has been removed, and what has been made is PSA has been made mandatory. So now what is that? So what I can say now, in BAW 3.5, PSA is not mandatory. Clear now? Fine. So this ends your BAW 3.5 data flow. What have we discussed as of now is related to 3.5 data flow. Any doubts with this part? First I'll come with online people one by one. Srinivas?
No, I'm fine.
Vinay? Okay. Sudhi?
I have a question.
Yeah, please Sudhi, go on. Tell.
If PSA is automatically generated, how do we avoid PSA?
That's what, no? If I select IDOC method, PSA will not be generated.
Okay, you have an option.
That's what I'm saying, right? So transfer method is of two types. He's asking, as I said, like PSA is automatically generated. How can you avoid generating the PSA table? So that is true if you are selecting IDOC as your transfer method. If you select IDOC as your transfer method, PSA will not be generated. If you select PSA as your transfer method, PSA gets generated. Yeah, Venugopal. Fine. So face-to-face people, everyone is clear? Right. So now, next what we are starting, differences between BAW 3.5 and 7 data flow. The differences between 3.5 and, so let us say now this is BAW 3.5 and let us say this is BI 7.0. Now what we are saying in 3.5, any extraction that we start, what we are saying, we are creating a info source. That means in 3.5, what is that now? Info source is mandatory. But when it comes to 7, what is that now? Info source is not mandatory. In BI 7.0, what is that now? If you want, you can create an info source, or it is not required. It is not mandatory. The task of info source is overtaken by some other thing. I'll show you next. So that's why we will be going to say that info source is not mandatory. So no need to create any info source, but in some cases you will say info source is mandatory. That also we'll discuss at the end. Now, what we said now in 3.5, PSA is not mandatory, right? But when it comes to 7, what has been done? PSA has been made. In 7, there is no other way. You have to use the staging area. PSA is must. It's mandatory. Then, what we are calling here, you have options of transfer rules and update rules options are there, right? Now I am saying there is no info source. That means will there be any update rules? There is no concept of update rules here. And what is that? We even don't call transfer rules. Here we will be calling it as transformations. What is that we are going to call it as? We don't call it as transfer rules or update rules. Here we just call it as transformations. And what you are seeing, you are using a scheduler called info package, right? What info package will do? It extracts the data from where? From source system. From source system to data will go up to what? Target, right? But when it comes to 7.0, what has been done? When you trigger your info package, right? It extracts the data from source system it extracts the data from source system to your updation will stop at where? PSA itself. When you use your info package, your updation will stop at PSA itself. So 3.5 data will be going up to target, but 7 your data flow has been divided to 2 steps. One step your data will stop at where? No, here PSA is always mandatory, I am saying. That's why while representing the PSA, how do I represent this? Data source slash PSA. One structure and one table. Data source is a structure, PSA is a table. And here in BI, a new concept has come called data transfer process. So DTP, it's also a scheduler only. What is DTP? Is also a scheduler. What it will do, it is going to now extract the data from data source slash PSA to what? To the target. So GTP will be extracting the data from data source slash PSA to, but when it comes to 3.5, what is it? There is no There is no concept of DTPs. In 3.5, you don't have any concept of. So DTP is a new concept in 7.0. It's also a scheduler, same as your info package, but it extracts data from what? PSA to target. And what we have discussed, this is a 3.5 is what? ETTL I said, but when it comes to 7, BS 7.0, it's just only called as ETL. So in BS 7.0, we don't call it as ETTL, it's called ETL. So now what is that ETL? You can understand now. You know? So now I am showing you the 7th flow. It is very simple. Now, first thing, what is that now? You have a source system. Okay, you have now. So then I have a, what is that now? Target. Then what do you want to extract? That's nothing but your, data source. And from data source where it goes? To the PSA. But as I said, it's always mandatory. Instead of representing separately what I am saying, everything is same. If you represent separately also is one and the same. But to avoid confusion, I am saying that is one structure and one table. Then data will be going from PSA to target. Through what it is going now? Through transformations. Okay. Then from source system to data source is through IDOCs. From data source to target is through transformations. Then how is data is coming from here to here is through, when you trigger your info package, right? So when I trigger my info package, this is your info package. Then through what? A DTP, that is your data transfer processor. Data will go from PSA to target. Understand now? So this is what is your BI 7.0 data flow. Then what is the main advantage with DTPs is? Why do you require, why DTPs concept has come into picture? Now let us say, imagine you have multiple targets. Target 1 and let us say it is 3.5. In 3.5 you are using info package where data is going up to target. That means your both targets are controlled by a single scheduler. Target 1 is also having the same scheduler. That means what are the data source that you have? It can have only one delta mechanism, one reference to the source. Okay? But here 7.0, if you use info package, data is coming to PSA. When I am triggering data DTP, what is happening? Data is going from PSA to target 1. Then again, you have to trigger now. From here to here is DTP 2. That means, what is that now? DTPs are what? Source and target specific. One source, one mechanism. So what is the advantage of DTPs? They are source and target specific. So DTPs are source and target specific. That is the main advantage of the one source, one target will have one DTP. One source, next target will have another DTP. Yes. So different schedulers now. So your data source can have multiple delta mechanisms. Clear? So what is the main advantage of DTPs? DTPs are source and target specific. Right? Done. Now I said ETL, right? What is ETL? You can just observe. When you extract the data now, when you trigger your info package, what it does? It extracts the data from source system. Then this data will be transferred to BI system. This data will be transferred to BI system. Then loaded into what? Loaded into TSA. ETL. Extract, transfer and info package is extract, transfer and load. And when I trigger my DTP, what happens? It extracts the data from TSA, then it will apply transformations and will load it into target. DTP is also ETL, but that is extract, transform and load. Info package is also ETL, that is extract, transfer and load. Two steps. Earlier, one shot ETL, but right now, first ETL is transfer and load. Next ETL is transform and load. Clear now? What is the data flow related to BI? Okay? Right. So now, what we are going to see is the you can schedule the load into multiple targets in 3.5 at the same time, but only one single scheduler is taking care of that. That is your info package. Only one single scheduler, it is loading into all the targets. That means your data source is having only all targets has to refer one instance of your data source. That is what is one delta mechanism what I am speaking. Yes, Sudhi? Right. So now, steps in. So these are like 5 guidelines for you as a BI consultant. Always whenever you want to extract the data into BI, remember these 5 steps. These are like 5 basic guidelines for you as a BI consultant. Always you have to follow these 5 steps whenever you want to extract the data into BI system. Now, what is your step 1? See? Step 1 I am saying, define the target. What is that now? Define the. So I performed exercise 1, wherein we developed one model in the BI database. That is, let us say, your P table. That entire exercise I can call it as your first step. Suppose you want to load data into the cube. First I need to create one info cube. So first, where exactly you want to load the data into the BI, do the modeling and develop your target. Right. So she is asking what is multiple delta mechanisms. She is asking. Now, if you look at your 3.5, what is that now? Both the targets I am saying is loaded with one scheduler. So we discussed about something called initial update and delta update. I think you would have seen in the video. Got it? Right. So there is some, when I am extracting data from source, we discussed now something, you have to set something called initial update, and there is some concept called update mode. What is this update mode concept is, before extracting the data into PI side, you have to specify this update mode. It defines what data has to be extracted from source to target. First time what you will do, you will be extracting entire data. First time what you will do, that's what we call it as the initial update. And next time onwards we just do something called delta update. What delta update will do, after the initial update, what is the data that is updated into the database? Only that data will be extracted, right? So now, if you look at your 3.5 flow, what happens in 3.5? I have multiple targets, target 1 as well as target 2. Yes. So that's what I am coming now. See now, data is coming to where first? Data source, PSA, info source. Now suppose I have target 1 and this is 3.5, imagine. Now, what time I am extracting now, let us say, I am extracting now data at 10 o'clock. What is happening? 10 o'clock, both your targets get filled or not? That means your data in the source referring to both target 1 and target at what time? The data is 10 o'clock, it's filled in both target 1 and target 2 simultaneously. But if you come to now here, now come to 7.0, let us say you have two targets. Target 1 and now I am triggering my info package at 10 o'clock. What is the data in this now? Data related to what? 10 o'clock load. Okay. Right. So in the PSA now you have data related to instance of what? What are the instance of data at source at 10 o'clock? The same instance is available at where it is available? PSA. But earlier I am saying it was in the target. Now when I trigger my DTP, let us say I am triggering my DTP 1 at 10 o'clock. What happens? What are the instance of 10 o'clock load will be available in target? But let us say I am triggering DTP 2 at 10:30. Now what happens? It has an instance of data now what? So about 10:30 also I extracted data from source to PSA. Now here it has instance of data of 10:30. That is what I mean to say multiple delta mechanisms. So that is now two separate schedulers you are going to use. So now when it is referring to your PSA, when target is referring to PSA, this target can refer to one instance of PSA, this target can refer to another instance of PSA. Now, see what I have done? I have done extracted data at 10 o'clock to PSA. So now what is the data in PSA is? Data related to 10 o'clock. I am triggering DTP at what time? 10 o'clock. What is the data here? So that means this is one reference. This target is referring to what time of PSA data? So now let us say 10:30 I have triggered it. Again I have brought some data to PSA. Now when I am triggering DTP2, it is referring data related to what? 10:30. So now it is referring to the instance of 10 o'clock. It is referring to the instance of 10:30. So now when you do the next load, let us say next load is at 11 o'clock. For target 1, I am filling the data at what time? 11 o'clock. That means what is data it is going to extract now? what is the data updated to the PSA from 10 to 11 will be extracted into your target one. But when you trigger DTP2, let us say I am triggering it at 11:30. That means it is fetching the data between 10:30 to 11:30. Understanding two instances now it is maintaining to the PSA. Multiple references. First time what you will do? I am extracting entire data. Next time only the updations. Yeah, you can trigger it. Simultaneously also you can trigger it. But if that is a separate scheduler, this is a separate scheduler. Is it clear? Vinay. So when I say here delta means it's with respect to PSA, not with respect to source I am speaking about. Any doubts? Any one of you? Clear? Right. So can I go further? Right. Now.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, please go on.
In 3.5,
Okay.
and it said like in info package, the data is extracted directly from source system to target.
Okay.
We are also passing through PSA, right? Like
It is passing through PSA. Okay, fine.
package would be directly from source system.
No, it passes through this link. I am saying. So ultimately, when I say I am triggering info package, what info package is doing? It is extracting the data from source system to target means what? Ultimately, it passes through this flow only.
Okay.
But finally, yeah, in 7 also same thing. When you trigger info package, data from source system, first it comes to data source, then it will update into, but it will stop at PSA level itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Clear
No.
now.
So now steps, what is the first step I said? Define so where exactly you want to load data into BS system. So first develop this particular target. So that is what I am saying it as a step number 1. Define your target. Then step 2. So what is step 2 is? Define the data source. So what is data source now? It defines what data has to be extracted from the source system. Now in this step 2 I can say two things. If it is a flat file extraction, if you are extracting data from a file, what you can do? You can define the data source in BS system itself. Okay, if it is other than flat file, what has to be done? Define the data source in what? Define the data source in source system and what has to be done? Replicate it to what? BS system. Clear now? So now what is your step 2 now? Define the data source. What it is going to do? It extracts the data, it is specifying now what data has to be extracted from the source system, right? Then step 3. Step 3 is to create. Step 3 is to create what? Transformations. What is transformations now? It defines how data has to be transformed from what? Data source slash PSA to from data source slash PSA to what? Target. How data has to go from here PSA. PSA will have raw data, same data is in the source, but how do we apply? How to change your data? So again, this is also like your same as your transfer rules, but you will get 2 more additional options will be there. The transfer rules I said you have 4, no? But transformations will say it will be of 6. Okay. Then step 3 is done now. Creation of transformations. Step 4 is trigger the create what? Info package. Okay. Step 4 is to create a step 4. Now what is step 4 is? Create info package. What it will do? Which extracts the data from? Source system to what? Data source slash PSA. And finally step 5 is create a DTP. What it will do? Which extracts the data from data source slash PSA to what? To the target. So this is step number 4 and this is step number 5. Clear now what is that thing? So first, any extraction that you start, define your target. Next, define your data source. Then create a transformation between data source and your target. Then trigger your info package and finally what? The DTP. So these are like 5 guidelines for you as a BA consultant. Always you have to follow now these 5 steps whenever you want to extract the data to BI system. Clear now? Right. So today I will stop here. So tomorrow we will be discussing types of DTPs, types of transformations. That will go for first half an hour. So in the next thing we will start our second exercise. Okay? Right. Source system you have 100 records. Okay? Yes. Okay, that is the first. Extraction is not a one-time activity. Extraction is a continuous activity. Now let us say in the source system at 10 o'clock you have 100 records. What is that now I did? I have extracted all 100 records to my target. Now after between 10 to 11 suppose some 20 records are updating. At 11 o'clock what is the data in the source? 120. When you trigger your info package next time, it has to fetch only 20 records. That is called as delta update. So it will maintain some pointer, something called timestamp. So that is there in already that I said one small topic I need to cover for you, I said, right? So that is there in the video. You can just go through that. Then tomorrow if you have some doubts, we'll discuss that. Right. Any doubts with online people? Clear? Yeah. So I'm stopping here today.